This is a slightly different video than normal. As you'll notice, I'm sitting at this desk as opposed to that desk. But if you do watch my live streams on Sundays, you know that I sometimes broadcast from this desk. And there's a computer here, which is one of the reasons I'm doing this today, because I did a video that I put up last week. And the video I put up last week was a little unusual. It was me outdoors taking a chainsaw to a tree that had fallen in such a way that it got hung up on another tree. And so I had mentioned chainsaws in another video. I'd used a little clip of it. And I thought, well, I'm going to show the whole video on this channel because people sometimes seem to enjoy the oddball stuff that I post from time to time on this channel. However, reading the comments section beneath the videos, oh boy, got me to thinking that I was going to respond to some of them. I have actually responded to some of them. But it reminds me of one of the reasons that I don't spend a lot of time reading the comments, because the comments are all over the board. Some people clearly didn't watch the video. Some people did watch the video, but I'm baffled. So I'm still going to go through the comments, and I will comment on the comments because it'll be easier than me sitting here typing out responses. But somebody wrote, safety glasses? Helmet? In the video, I'm wearing safety glasses. I'm not wearing a helmet. I've known many people who own chainsaws who don't own helmets. A helmet? I'm not going to wear a helmet while running a chainsaw, but I am wearing safety glasses in the video. So I don't know why you'd ask about safety glasses when I'm wearing them. Somebody did say, hey, Steve, I have a question. If a tree falls in a forest and no one is around and it hits a lawyer, who gets sued? Everybody. No. That's what we call assumption of the risk. I'm doing my own thing there. Now, someone wrote Red Green meets Benny Hill, and I did jokingly say that I Benny Hilled the video because a couple of spots I sped it up to make it go faster. Amusing but not instructional. Well, I don't know many people are coming to my channel to see how to use a chainsaw, but then I like your narration and nothing you said. So they like the narration and nothing I said. And then says, I hope everyone will understand that a tree weighing at least hundreds of pounds suspended entirely in the air isn't universally called a widowmaker by professional woods folks without deadly reason. I'm not sure if he's saying that this one wasn't a widowmaker or it was, or I'm not quite sure, but then again, it wasn't instructional, so I apologize. Somebody else wrote, looks like you should stick to being a lawyer and hire a professional tree man to do the work. Do you know what it would cost to have somebody come out and do that professionally? What's wrong with me as a hobby going out and doing this myself? I saved a couple $100. Looks like you should stick to being a lawyer. Now, Doug, who I believe is a good friend of the show, wrote, Steve has every other animal on his property but no beaver to take the tree down. That's true. I don't know if there's any beavers living anywhere near me, but if one wanted to come and take that tree down, I'd let him. My only concern, though, is if he dammed the creek, it's right off camera, it might cause trouble for me. And I'll get to that in a second because someone else wrote, I'm a West Coast faller. I'll keep my trap shut because any homeowner using a saw to keep their property clean is good in my books, no matter how dangerous they're making it. Good job, got the widowmaker down and lived to tell a tale. I hate to break the news to anybody, but nothing I did was dangerous, okay? That tree was hung up very, very well up there, and someone wrote, Steve Lehto, the chainsawing lawyer. There's no denying it, you're definitely a lawyer. I'm not quite sure how watching me use a chainsaw would be that. But one guy wrote, I had a huge dead ash tree that the Canadians would call a danger tree. I figured I'd bend it down with my tractor so it was leaning away from me when I cut it. I tossed a weighted ball up onto the branches, pulled a wire rope around the tree, and hooked to my tractor. Just pulling it taut made the tree explode. Yeah, I've toyed with that idea before where I've got a tree that's leaning, and I hope it's leaning the right way. And I'm always like, could I grab something and pull on it? And you're like, you know something, there's a lot of energy stored in a tree that you start bending. Somebody wrote, your brothers are watching this laughing their butts off. Well, no, they're going. I bet they're wishing they were helping. Somebody listed a bunch of things you never show on YouTube unless you have thick skin. welding and soldering, stripping electric wires, building a driveway with geotextile, pouring concrete, or using a chainsaw. Someone said, can't speak without laughing. Annoying. Annoying. Hey, sorry. Someone wrote something in German. I have no idea what it means, and I'm not going to look it up. Somebody wrote, this is good stuff. We had a similar tree. It didn't prove to be dangerous to remove, but I was very glad when it was gone. And by the way, this tree wasn't going to actually kill anybody. I mean, it was hung up out there. My concern was it was damaging the tree it was hung up on. That's all. I'm surprised he didn't think of going farther up the trail and pull the butt toward the base of the standing tree. I thought of it. Why do people assume that you didn't think of anything other than what you did? I thought of it, but the problem is that going up that hill, I don't know if you saw at the very end, but the hill goes up and then straight down. And so if I'd put my ATV up there, I'd have to walk up and down the hill a million times. But then also, I'd be trying to pull it from the thin end to the thick end through a V, meaning that it would probably get hung up that way. But also, I wouldn't be able to see what I was doing because the ATV would drop right down the hill. But yeah, I thought of it, but he's surprised I didn't think of it. Someone says use pulleys to clean up dead trees. Pulleys. Who's going to mount the pulleys? It amazes me how many times I watch stuff like this only to wonder why people let off the throttle exactly at the point when they need to stay on it. Because I was trying not to tear up the transmission in the ATV. I knew that if I yanked it a few times, I could get it out. But if I stayed on the throttle and burned up the transmission, then I'd be worried about, should I shoot a video of myself trying to rebuild a transmission? Love your channel when you talk about legal issues, but as a 73-year-old guy who's been doing it yourself, cutting trees since I was in high school, and who has an arborist friend, can I gently suggest that you stick to lawyering? Again, I don't, what's funny is people to go, oh, what you're doing is dangerous, without explaining what they thought I did was dangerous, is kind of like, One guy said, as someone who's felled many trees, the hang-up limb should have been pulled in parallel with the side-by-side or whatever you used. Okay, the only way I could do that again would be going up and over the hill where I lose sight of it, or you can't see, and I responded to this because there's you can't see this in the video, there's a creek off to the left-hand side. So the tree is over here, the creek is here. I can't pull the ATV, I don't want to pull the ATV in such a way that it goes into the creek. I would have gotten the ATV stuck in the creek, would have made a mess, and I didn't want to do that. So again, you may wonder if something's off camera that you can't see and I didn't talk about. When in doubt, you can always watch Finnish lumberjack videos for tree felling pointers. You were smart enough to resist the bright idea to climb a ladder and use a chainsaw. And this guy suggests protective Kevlar chaps. Several people suggested chaps. I don't own any chaps, I'm sorry. Someone else said I would have gone up the trail before the cut of the hung up part to get it out of the fork by pulling with the strap. To get it out of the fork by pulling with the strap. I'm not sure what you're saying there. Somebody pointed out that the Benjamin's not in the video, and that's true. A lawyer with a chainsaw, what could possibly go wrong? If something goes wrong, sue. But you got to see the warnings that they put in those owner's manuals that come with chainsaws. I recently bought a wood chipper. The machine is literally covered with warnings. Do not stick arm in here. Do not stick appendages in here. Do not. This is what happens when a YouTube lawyer pretends he's an arborist. I don't think I ever claimed to be a professional. I think I made it quite clear that I was just doing this. Somebody else suggests pulling parallel instead of perpendicular. Again, to pull parallel, you'd have to drive through a creek, which I didn't want to do. Somebody suggests putting up a trail camera to periodically post animals that appear on the camera. I've got trail cameras all over the place, but it's just lots of pictures of deer, coyotes, turkeys. Somebody wrote, well done, Steve. I couldn't have done it better myself. I probably couldn't have done it myself to begin with. Somebody also points out that the quick way is usually the worst way. I watched a video when arborists put tension on a leaner. When the tree finally fell, it sounded just as it hit the ground like a gun went off. Yeah, and that's the point. Is that you'd be flexing the tree, and they'd be putting a lot of energy in there. Somebody wrote, I start my steel every other year, and I have to Google how to start it every time because there is a trick. I have to admit, cutting the main tree and the branch not move was the best part of the video. Somebody wrote, I didn't recognize this was a Steve Lehto video, then I heard the voice. I'm in the exact same situation with a tree on my mom's property. I also have a 34-year-old steel saw. Starting is like choke, yank until you hear the smallest hint of combustion, de-choke, next yank, it's vroom time. And in this case, there is no actual primer. I mentioned priming it and then pulling it, and it's actually the pulling of it is the priming of it. But there you go. Ann Roberts, where is your safety gear? Let's see. I got work boots on. I got gloves on. I got long sleeves, long pants. I'm wearing ear protection. I'm wearing eye protection. The only thing I've heard anybody mention I should be wearing that I wasn't was chaps and a helmet. And again, no. Now, somebody else wrote, love stuff like this, useful and entertaining. As someone who has to deal with mulberry infestations, I can relate. And I'm old enough to get the Benny Hill reference. Someone said, take the logs to the road and put up a sign for free firewood. It'd be a lot of work dragging those logs quite a ways, but I actually like the idea of chopping them up and leaving them where they are because they will eventually return to nature, and animals will do stuff with them, primarily smaller animals or insects and so on. And so in nature, the tree would fall over and return back to nature, which is what I'm doing, though. Rick says he cheats with a bucket loader. Geek G points out the only fault I noticed was the red shirt. Star Trek fans know that wearing one is tempting fate, which is true. I hadn't thought of that. I'm simply wearing it's long sleeve, it's a tech shirt. This is a very, very hot day I was doing this. Johnny Boy says, I was shaking my head the entire time. I'm not quite sure why. TSL says, you should be wearing a hard hat. You know, I don't own a hard hat, and all the guys I know with chainsaws, none of them own hard hats. So, Mark Williams, someone let a lawyer have a chainsaw. T-Magic, no safety equipment. No. Okay, other than the helmet, I'm not sure what you're looking for. You could have cut a notch in the stump and used it like a pulley to redirect the pulling motion. Oh, you mean run the toe strap around the stump? That's interesting, although I think there would have been too much friction to do that. But it's interesting. I admit I hadn't thought of that. Here we go. Michigan Nature and Wildlife says, I had one like that last summer, wouldn't come down. I ended up splitting it at the hinge point with a couple of 12 gauges. Okay, again, that's not something I would have thought of either. MJC, without sharing too much, how many acres do you have? Several. Cleverich, lumberjacking with Steve. Somebody else, Jeremy Hanna suggests 12 gauge, right at the right spot. I was unaware of that. Never thought about that. I grew up in Thunder Bay, Ontario. It has the largest Finnish population outside of Finland. Finlanders would be proud of your chainsaw skills. That's true. The Finns love their chainsaws. Although the Thunder Bay, Ontario Finnish population has got to be similar to the Finnish population in the copper country of Michigan. So, steel chainsaw, you got the right tool for the job, says Curious Mike. I've got 2 steel chainsaws. Jerry asks about the chaps. The chaps. Yeah, again, I don't own any chaps. You know, you got to understand, when you're cutting a dead tree, it's throwing off sawdust. It's not throwing off jagged pieces of metal or anything. Somebody mentions an electric battery-powered chainsaw. It's going to be a while before that happens. I love the smell of a 2-stroke motor in the morning. Believe in yourself. Jim's Equipment Shed suggests a cheap pole saw. I do not have one. I've got a saw that's it's like a hacksaw, but with for branches, a branch saw that's about 12 feet tall on a pole. but it does not have a motor on it, which is something I understand I could get. But I've so rarely run into a need for one. Yeah, Benny Hill, but I don't have the soundtrack music for it, Ted Mitchell points out. Oh, a Cadman Channel says I should be wearing a plaid shirt. Obviously. I believe the shirt I'm wearing is from the Free Press Marathon. I forgot what year that was. 710 says somebody never learned about angles. Now, I understand all about angles. What you can't see is what's off camera, and that is that I am on a trail that turns right there, and right here is a creek. And so for me to go over here and pull this way, I'd be running into a creek. So, somebody who learns about angles also learns about mud. Somebody says that if I were Steve in this video, I'd be doing things a little differently, perhaps safer. Moonwolf Consulting complains that I'm not wearing a hard hat. 1991 Green, you need a pole saw. And again, that another tool that I don't have. If I had it, I probably would have used it because I could have gone up to the fork in the tree and just pole sawed it right there and taken care of that. But Frank Haig suggests safety chaps. They keep the bar oil off your clothes. Oh, boy. Anyone with that many trees should have a tree saw. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm buying more equipment. Like I said, I just bought a wood chipper. I've also got a brush cutter. I've got the line cutter. I got all that stuff. I got all kinds of steel equipment. Steel and Cub Cadet. You need to get a bull wheel so you can pull the tree in one direction while pulling in another. Yeah, no. There's all kinds of stuff I could have done, but I don't have the equipment. Like I said, all I had was chainsaws and a tow strap and an ATV. Golf Bravo Whiskey, good to see you out from behind the desk. I can't believe I just spent 9 minutes, 37 seconds watching this. Thanks, Steve. Oh, boy. So another person suggests I could have gone in a different direction. People have also suggested that it was surprising to see I've got legs because I'm always behind a desk. The moral of the story is if you have a bad temper when driving, keep your chainsaw warm. He's referring to the earlier story. Rain Dancer says hard hat. I've had several people suggest that. Like I said, I don't own one, and I've never, people I know with chainsaws don't own them either. Danny Griffin says, hey, steel makes great chainsaws. Also McCullough, and got a couple electric chainsaws. Yeah, and some people object to the phrase widowmaker. One said, you're not married, and I said, who said it's going to kill me? It might kill somebody else. Number two, it's just a nickname for something that's hanging up that if you were to go near, theoretically could fall on you. Okay, it's a joke. A winch would have probably helped you out a bit. The problem with a winch on an ATV is then all it's going to start doing is dragging the ATV towards the tree. But it goes, doesn't he have a Jeep? Somebody else asked. Yeah, I do own a Jeep. It does not have a winch on it. No, it does not. I'm also not sure that I could get the Jeep down to that spot on my property without scraping it up too much. So somebody said I was going to make a comment on how you could have done this better, but you've gone and done it already. Now, here's somebody who says, if you can't pull it straight, you did the best you could. There you go. Good job keeping the blade out of the dirt. Appreciate the random content. And that's the point, is I couldn't pull it straight. I couldn't, okay? Just trust me on that. It's just, it was where I was in the haunted forest. There's so much stuff on the ground that you can't see that's in the brush. But also, like I said, there's a creek right here. Camera's here, a creek right here. So to pull this way, you'd be pulling back and forth across a creek. You wouldn't want to do that. So Uncle Willie says, I'm ashamed to say I took my steel on a job today. My chain was dull. Oh, yeah. Wound up using a Sawzall. 11Q Games says the steel is in the short list of equipment I found to be worth extra money if you need to do much cutting. And Danielle Griffin says steel is great, but I do not own one. I actually have a steel shirt I wear on camera periodically. And in our family, it's steel. Johnny Knoxville, hey, watch this. Edge 5218, I could come to Michigan and show you to carve that stump into a bear. Yeah, there's that stump. It's about yay high, and it's dry now. Anybody wants to come out and carve it up, let me know. Get your pickup back there and pull it in one pull. If you don't have a pickup, use Jay Leno's turban car. Someone else suggesting chaps. Paul Cannon was rooting for the tree. I'll admit there comes a time where I would have given up and said, fine, I'm going to leave it there. Let nature take its course. Van Street just cut down 3 widowmakers on his property. One is over 50 feet high. Here's the thing. With much more, I would have brought in some help. I've got brothers who will help me. I've got neighbors who'd help me. Glock 380 says, where's your high-vis vest? Well, it's not hunting season. Oh. And PNW says it's a bar, not a blade. Talking about whether or not you should be hitting the ground with that. But the bar is the thing that the chain is running on. It doesn't matter if the bar gets dirty. You don't want the chain getting dirty. But, you understand. Alan Miller suggests at the 520 mark, I could have just gone back under the tree and flipped it out. I don't think so. Woody Maristum, no hard hat, no chaps. Says that he's had people killed and maimed when running chainsaws. We like your videos and would hate to see you become a victim. All too many weekend warriors wind up in the hospital or morgue. To which POV responded, relax, dog, he'll be fine. Stop. Concerned trolling. Flavor hostage, I usually do that with manual tools. Lots of cursing, but I live on a small city lot. Probably would have used a pole saw. Like I said, I don't have one. Knock Knock says, when I tell the wife I'm friends with Steve Lehto, she doesn't understand. This is what I'm talking about. Thanks, friend. WGMBH, I like your second channel. Steve Thompson is getting it on the ground. Safety is job one. You're lucky the trunk diameter is small enough to do not bind up on your bar. Those can get tricky. And you are right, and that is a real concern. Because if here's the trunk going up and down and you start cutting into it, if the tree leans onto the bar can get stuck in there. And I know that. So usually if you're concerned about that, you start cutting it in like this, so that if it starts bending, you can get your bar out of there. And on the ground, you'll occasionally see a couple times where I sliced it and I pulled it out and rolled the log a bit and hit it again because it was starting to bind the wrong direction. So I got that. Thank you very much. Conspiracy Bear says there's faster ways to do this, but this was more fun to watch. Well, you always want to have that efficiency and economy where you want it to be as fun as possible without being dangerous, but you don't want to take so long doing it that it becomes not fun. So, Edwin Martin, what chainsaw do you recommend for cutting through security glass? Asking for a friend. I think you use the ones they use on like Mission Impossible where they take a scribe and they go around and they tap it and it pops right out. I've seen it in the movies. It must be real. Dave McKenzie says, I should have accompanied this by saying, hold my beer. Homestead Helper, when I first got my chainsaw, I had the hardest time starting it. Yeah, no, that's the whole point. There's a weird starting procedure for the steels. That's all there is. Carol says, I see you're branching out from your law practice, kind of out on a limb. And Craig Grant says, Steve dealing with a hostile witness. I've had a couple witnesses that I got to the point where they probably would have been, better off having me with a chainsaw instead of using the words. Bubba K says this is not dangerous. Well, I know you're probably saying it ironically, but it actually wasn't dangerous. Escargot says, I don't know, Steve. I think you should give it another tug. Joshua Gibson, this was awesome. Do more of these, Steve. So, meanwhile, Daniel says, Daniel, I laugh every time you crack up. So I need to introduce you to the person at the top who says, why is this guy laughing all the time? And there you go. So Toolman says Steve was right, like a Benny Hill video, to which just there for the lulz says, I was thinking Three Stooges. Lakota Warrior, the woodchuck would have done it faster. If the wildlife on my property was doing their jobs, I wouldn't have to worry about these things. But I do. So Dougie Deuce is good job, Steve. I've cut hundreds of trees in my days, and I don't think I could have done a better job. So I just want to show you a smattering a smattering of comments all over the board. But the real thing is that I wonder when people go, why weren't you wearing safety glasses? When I was. Or people go, I'm surprised he didn't think of this, when you can't see what's off camera to that one side. And there's a creek right there. And the creek's not loud, so you can't hear it. Plus, I'm running a chainsaw. But that's why I did not take the ATV over here. Number one, there's too much junk, fallen trees and so on. But also, there was a creek, and it would have been twice as much work. Then people would have said, why didn't you just take the ATV on the trail and just yank it sideways? So you can't win. I guess that's my point, is you can't win. So I hope you enjoyed this. Not sure if I'll post it, but if I did, you'll see it. If I didn't, you won't. Figure that out. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.